Let's get ready to do-si-do into some local heritage. Watch as Rafi Andonian joins us to share the fascinating story of square dancing in Arkansas. Check it out.
Square Dancing Day is this weekend, and there's no better place to celebrate square dancing than right here in Arkansas, where the state's official American folk dance is square dancing.
Here to step us through its history is celebrity historian Rafi Andonian. Thanks for joining us, Rafi.
Hey, here I am, and it's great to be here, especially in Arkansas, where the official state folk dance is square dancing.
I love that.
Perfect place to talk about it. Although, you know what? There's 30 plus states that have an official folk dance that's square dancing. It's very American.
Hey, we're in good company then.
That's right.
So how did square dancing get created? How did it get started?
A lot of different cultural influences, as you might imagine. You have the English contra and the reel. You even have a little bit of the Irish jig, so if this from the island nation, if you will, that it incorporates into it. It's a 16th, 17th century thing that's going to start to develop. You also have, the French, the quadrilles and the French influence that's coming in as well. And then you have West African influence, because early roots of what we now call square dancing, a lot of these guys would have these steps memorized. However, that's not the case if you're a black slave, because you're going to be learning it from being around and often playing the music for these, the fiddle and so on, for the dancers. Well, what happens is they go back into the community, black community, slave community, and start to do a call and response type thing, which you find a lot in the West African cultures, a call and response type social situations. And so as a result, the loud instructions come into play because they don't have the formal training to have it memorized. So being told the formations and the steps to take, right? And so that adds, if you kind of over time, the key component that we think of with square dancing, which is having a collar, right? And that collar comes in from that influence there. So quite literally, you have that English, French, and West African enslaved influence that's coming together to create the square dancing origin. That's why it's so American, and that's why it's across, so many states as the official state song.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. What are there different types of square dancing?
That's right. And like anything else, in history, there's change over time, right? And what you're seeing there actually is a more recent version of square dancing. You can see those are actually at high schools and PE classes. There you go right there. That's one example right there. And why is that happening that way? Because that's not the same thing that they're doing a couple hundred years prior. Well, originally, as you might imagine, the stuff we talk about starts on the eastern seaboard. In New England, kind of comes down Appalachia, the southeast. Actually has some Native American influence as well. For example, some ceremonial dances in New England that would come in. There's accounts, direct accounts of primary sources that are talking about Native American fiddlers. So there's that influence as well. That's the old school square dancing, okay? But then there's this new version that comes up. Really, we're talking in like the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and especially the 50s, so more recent in that particular time stretch, where it was just called the Western style. And that Western style is revived with what you just saw earlier with the high school gym classes, PE classes. And the reason for that is because as the nation was industrializing, and especially post-World War II, kind of this consumer economy that emerges, there is this sort of nostalgic look back to our more kind of folksy roots of Americanness, right? Because it's such an American dance. But it's not exactly the same thing as what it was then, but it does see a revival and a different version. Now, if you look a little closer to square dancing, what you'll also find there's actually round versions. So there's rounds and there's squares and there's lines, like there are all kinds of shapes in the square dancing, right? And there's even clogging. You might have seen some of that in the past. That can be incorporated with square dancing. So there are many different styles, and they fall into those couple of big, broad categories, the historical and the more recent. You might run into folks, maybe you are, parents or grandparents that did do square dancing in gym class for the reason we're talking about, the revival in the 50s,
Oh,
interesting.
Neat.
You just named 3 of the shapes I can draw. Line, square, circle.
Nailed it.
That's what makes it
you
great,
can square
right?
dance.
I can square dance.
You have to just listen to the caller and do it. But I've done it before, and it's very challenging because my reaction time to actually do it, I'm like always one step behind, so I'm like throwing the shapes off.
I would love to watch Rafi square dance. That needs to be a segment.
Where can people learn more about square dancing, Rafi? Is it a place folks can go?
Yeah, so the best way to do it, obviously, like with these things, is to practice it and go to clubs, and this is how this stuff stays alive. So there's an Arkansas Square Dancing Federation that you can look up, and they have branches of clubs throughout different parts of the state, including here in NWA, Northwest Arkansas, where you can find a local club to go and participate and learn, so you're not a step behind like I am, all right?
That's great.
But a couple other things you can also look up beyond that if you want to learn more is there's a square dancing historical federation that you can look up, which is really interesting, that you can look up the Historical Society for that and see some of the stuff they've done. It's called the Square Dancing History Project.
Okay.
And another place I would look more broadly is the Society of Folk Dance Historians. Believe it or not, there's a whole society of folk dance historians, which would include square dancing, but beyond square dancing as well. Those are the three things I would look up: your Arkansas clubs, the Square Dancing Project specifically, and then the Society of Folk Dancing Historians. You would really learn a lot doing that.
Thank you so much
Awesome.
for all
Thanks,
that info.
Rafi.
Cool to know
Got
about
to
our
stay
history
a
of
couple
square dancing.
few steps ahead.
Gotta stay.
you
I
know?
like what
Gotta
you
stay
did.
ahead.
I like what you did.
Thank
Yes.